All right, Ben, we're recording. We're live. How you doing, mate? Good to see you.
Great to see you. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Very well, mate. Very well. Good to see you in Atlantis, Bitcoin Atlantis in Madeira, and I believe we're going to cross paths again in Warsaw.
Yes, I'll be there. Having party.
Halving party, bring it on. And here you are on our side of the world, usually based in Australia.
Yeah, yeah. Generally, when I start traveling around, I do it for quite an extended period. So don't know how many months it's going to be, but yeah, just going to dart around from conference to conference and see how it goes.
So, Pay BTC is the name of your company. Do you want to get the plebs up to speed on who you are, why you founded the company, and what the company is in Australia?
Sure. So I'm the founder of PayBTC. It's a company that focuses on making it easy to buy Bitcoin. So we're a convenience-based platform. We're not trying to be a, fully fledged exchange where you have, all the settings and high frequency trading, blah, blah, blah. It's more for the everyday person who needs Bitcoin and they need it quickly in a simple, easy to understand manner. So we're a non-custodial platform. So we don't hold users' keys. We force them to hold their own keys. And there's about 5 exchanges globally that currently do that. So we're one of those. Um, yeah, we're one of the only Bitcoin-only exchanges in the country. There's about four, but we're the only non-custodial one in the Southern Hemisphere. So yeah, we've got to try and normalize this type of exchange because it's actually the way Bitcoin was intended to be. It was never intended to be bank coin held on exchanges and stuff. It's meant to be your money in your wallet.
Yeah, 100%. And I just actually this morning was chatting to Grafton from Vexel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that project.
No, no, I'm not.
Yeah, well, Grafton's going to be in Warsaw as well, so I'll make sure to get you guys introduced because yeah, he's saying exactly the same thing as you. And Vexel are an app that is a peer-to-peer app, which doesn't store any of your personalized data that's going to be leaked anywhere. And you download the app, and then you can just peer-to-peer trade with people. But their idea is you shouldn't be doing that over the banking rails. Get in front of people, get face to face with other Bitcoiners, and this way we can start spreading education quicker. And explode the P2P scene, which we need more initiatives like this. So I'm really looking forward to the next 5 years to see, what other services are going to start coming out, other than obviously the Bitcoin ETFs, which are the complete opposite
Mm.
ethos to that. So the plebs always want to know like a rabbit hole story. And I mean, you're a pretty young dude. How old are you?
I'm 27.
27. And when did you find, when did you start Pay BTC?
I started PBTC in March 2019, but I discovered Bitcoin around 2013. I think it was mid 2013, yeah.
Well, hang on a minute. How old were you in 2013
Or maybe 15 or 16. I think,
then?
yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so right, you're 15, let's just say. It all starts clicking for you. But at that age, and I think about teenagers now because I've got some, they don't have money. They don't have expendable cash just to like,
Yeah.
fuck, I need to hoon into Bitcoin. Like this is the thing. So
I
what
didn't have any money. I had like a couple $100 in savings in my account. And I
so
was,
that's gotta be the worst feeling ever.
yeah, yeah, I discovered it, but I didn't realize that I actually had to accumulate it because there was no education around that time. It was a whole different world. It was just magic internet money. It wasn't really the future of, you know, money itself back then. It was just cool internet money that you could send anywhere, anytime.
So how did you discover it?
I think I discovered it through an exchange called CoinJar back in the day. And yeah, they're now UK based. They left Australia and went over there. But uh, yeah, I think that's where I can pinpoint it down. It must have been an ad from them or something. And I bought my first Bitcoins through them. So
But
that's
what was like at the age of 15, you're generally not like reading Austrian economics philosophical books or trying to figure out, we need to fix the money. Like what was the,
Well, I was always wanting to, um, build wealth and be successful.
Mhm.
Because my parents have been trying to do that their whole lives. They've been entrepreneurial, but haven't quite made it. So I was trying to figure out why they haven't made it. Because they've done successful things, but they still don't have much money. And I started to dig deeper into what's happened. And back then it was, limited education material. You really basically had Andreas Antonopoulos, uh, screaming through the mic in multiple different countries in his recorded events. But other than that, I think the Bitcoin standard only came out in 2016 or 2015.
I think it
Um,
was later. Yeah,
2018 perhaps. I could be.
2018. I
Yeah.
don't know. Sorry, safe. I don't know the actual date that you dropped the book. I should do,
Yeah.
but
It feels like it's a long time ago, but really it wasn't too long ago. But yeah, I think The Internet of Money by Andreas Antonopoulos was a key book for me,
yeah.
because it sort of condensed a lot of his talks into small portions that you could absorb quite quickly, and he gets the point across. But uh, yeah, prior to that, it was really just YouTube and searching around and finding stuff, um, getting any information you could. But back then, it was really just something that I was trading, trying to make more fiat currency because I was still fiat brained.
Mm,
Everything was AUD. You have to earn Aussie dollars. You have to pay Australian dollar tax. You have to, you know, play the fiat game. And it wasn't accumulate Bitcoin, forget about everything else. But now, after all those years and after all those resources that have been able to access now over the years, you get to a point where you realize nothing matters in the fiat or currency or economic space other than Bitcoin because it's going to eat everything for breakfast. So it's like a big black hole,
yeah.
economic hole. It sucks everything in and then more. So it's a big deal. But you're definitely
So
not going to realize that back in 2013 unless if you're a mathematical genius or you've read the white paper, you understand everything, you understand all implement implications, and you've got to conceptualize it all in your head, which is that was the challenge. And if you were able to do that, you won the prize by having a lot more Bitcoin earlier on.
mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, man. Very few people would have been coming to those realizations back then. I mean, it was just still so nascent, and we hadn't had the depth of thinking. I remember actually like the articles and everything. Safe's book, obviously, and then the articles that people such as Gigi Farrington, Breedlove, uh, were dropping. Parker, obviously, with his Gradually Then Suddenly series. Brandon Quittem, I remember. All of these
Yeah.
names just suddenly started like creeping in to like this field of like just wow. Hang on a minute, how can you take Bitcoin in that direction and
Mhm.
it all make perfect sense? And how can you take it in that? I mean, how are you talking about Bitcoin being mushrooms? Like, that doesn't make any sense until you read the actual piece.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just yeah, that was definitely not around in those early days. So were you talking to your friends at like the age of 15? Like your dudes, there's this magic internet money, you've got to get on board. Or did they just think you were crazy?
Yeah, you always try and tell your friends about something cool you've discovered, right? But they they were too busy doing other things and interested in things that normies are interested in. Like Bitcoin really chooses people that are asking the hard questions and questioning the system itself. And if you're not already doing that, you really struggle to be on its wavelength until it's too late. So yeah, everyone buys at the price they deserve, and I sort of gave up on trying to make people see. I give them the information and they do with it what they will.
I remember, I think it was in Prague that you were telling me a story about you saw an opportunity. Were you not playing the ARB? You were ARBing Aussie dollar against Korean won in
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
gosh, the arbitrage days, that was I didn't have any money at the time, so I thought I was making a lot of money, but I was moving whatever I had around the world trying to make 20, 15%, 15 to 25% actually. The difference between these inefficient markets during the early days, I think it was 2015, 2016. Um, so that was quite wild. Even early 2017, it went through till until all the markets became too efficient to the point where it wasn't worth it.
Hmm.
But I remember I was in my full-time job as a designer in 2016, and half the day I'd be arbitraging instead of actually doing my job because it was making way more money than my minimum wage full-time job as a designer. So,
So can you just
um,
explain how did you like suddenly become aware that this opportunity existed? And just basic explanation for those people that might be thinking what's an arbitrage and how you were
yeah,
using these two different countries against each other.
yeah. So a lot of the arbitrage I did was between Japan. And I don't know how I discovered it. I think I was just trying to find the best exchanges all around the world. And then I noticed that there was a discrepancy in price. And I went, that can't be right. That's way more expensive. And it costs way less to buy it here. And I could sell it here for 20% more. And I go, well, okay, how do I get my money into Japan? And I went, right, I've got to sign up to a bunch of banks and I've got to get, accounts that can actually remit overseas. And suddenly I found myself darting around Brisbane City and Sydney City, signing up to a bunch of different banks, and then subsequently getting shut down faster than I could open them. Because, some young kid wants to remit, you know, 10 grand or 15 grand overseas and do it repeatedly multiple times a day, or multiple times a week because it took about 24 hours to go through. But it was quite the experience trying to figure out the inefficiencies and trying to make it more efficient by forcing it, trying to find the best accounts that nobody can find, and just have this efficient system that could get money moving ASAP. But if I had millions of dollars, I could have made millions of dollars. But yeah, I only had a few grand to play with, really. So didn't make as much as I could have back then. It was a very big opportunity. There was a lot of arbitrage.
So it was
So
cheaper in Australia to buy the Bitcoin.
uh no, it was cheaper to buy it in Japan and then you brought it back to Australia and you'd sell it here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time you'd done the currency version, once you looked at the currency version so it's been quoted in yen, Bitcoin, right?
Mm.
Bitcoin to
Yeah,
Japanese
yeah.
yen. But
Yeah.
then the conversion to Aussie dollar was like that. That was where it was all out of whack.
Well, the conversion from Bitcoin back into Aussie dollars was where the profit was made. So you'd
Right.
had to get yen really cheap, get yen into Japan, and then you'd move it back to Australia in Bitcoin and then sell it for Australian
Where
dollars.
are you
And
buying yen in
then
Australia?
yeah, wasn't easy. There was a few banks that allowed you to do it without much fees. And then, one bank in particular, which was ANZ, that was fast enough to remit it quickly enough to get it through. And then ended up being HSBC and a few others. But yeah, they're all gone now. All my accounts have been closed.
Man, that's
I've got a stack of
hardcore though.
debit cards about this high just of closed rest in peace accounts. So
Show me the incentives and I'll show you the behavior, right? You're incentivized to get as much Bitcoin as you possibly can. So that's the reason you're running around two major cities of Australia trying to find banks that are going to open an account for you that's going to allow you to exchange Aussie into yen, then
mm.
send that yen across to a Japanese bank account or a bank based in Japan, which is even then, did you have to link it to a Japanese exchange? Were you
Yeah,
using
Japanese
Mount Gox or
exchange.
something? Or?
One of them was called CoinX.
Mm.
That was a coin with a Q. That was an exchange back in the day. That was pretty efficient. Yeah, but there was a
Mate.
lot of exchanges. There was South Korea. There was Chinese exchanges. Yeah, I played around with a few, but the most successful was Japan. So
All
yeah.
right. So you're doing that and you're holding down like a fiat job.
Hmm.
At what point
For
are
one
you
year.
like
I only worked a fiat job for one year and then I had to quit.
1 year, right? And that was doing what?
Digital design and marketing.
Okay.
Yeah, so UI UX design, user interfaces and stuff.
And then I mean, at what point are you like, right, fuck this, I'm going to start a Bitcoin exchange with as low a KYC
Well,
as possible?
I it actually took me 2 years of traveling around the world to figure out that I needed to do something for myself because I quit my job. I had a bit of savings from that job, um, and then yeah, spent 2 years traveling with a friend that I met in New Zealand from the US, and yeah, move around. Lived in Berlin for a few months. Lived in Japan for a few months. Spent some time in the US. But then when I was living in Germany, in Berlin, I decided to start PayBTC right before I came back to Australia. And then when I came back, I've really dove in, got building it, and managed to build it over 2 months. Um, I had some developers from overseas to help me out, and yeah, I designed the whole thing, used my design skills just to get that part sorted and made it the way that I wanted it to be, the way that I would want it to be as a Bitcoiner, trying to buy and sell Bitcoin. And yeah, we removed any step that wasn't required. It was the maximum simplicity. Everything that doesn't need to be there is not there. So that was the approach. That's the approach we hold strong to today. We uh, ultra minimalist approach to the exchange process.
And is there a big team now, or are you just still keeping
It's
it as lean
no,
as possible?
we've kept it pretty lean. It's 5 people, so it's you know very easy to manage. We're thinking about Europe, but we're not entirely sure if it's worth it with all these regulation changes coming up.
Mm.
Uh, we're making sure that it's going to be viable and low risk enough to actually make it worth our while. But yeah, we're growing in Australia. Had some banking issues, but we're growing again and fixed up those relationships. So yeah, it's looking good.
Banks being like, we don't want exposure to, in air quotes, crypto related companies. Is that the kind of thing that's going on in Australia as well? Because the UK is just getting
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, banks are pretty anti Bitcoin and crypto. It's because the scammers ruin it for everyone, right?
Mm.
The crypto reputation that leaks into Bitcoin, which is hard money. This is very different to crypto. So unfortunately, this is why we can't have nice things because of scammers. So,
Hmm.
um, but I did manage to contact the CEO of NAB, National Australia Bank, and it looks like I'm going to be able to get some accounts back, hopefully. Um, Managed to get in touch with the big dogs, so hopefully that helps out.
What was, I mean, how did that conversation go? What can you share? Because I'd love to know, like, when you actually get above the person who's just sitting at the desk doing their day to day ticking boxes, it's a completely different conversation when you're talking to the
It's yeah,
CEO.
they treat you like a real human being, and they want your problem to be solved because they see the individual and they see them wanting to use their services and nothing less, nothing more. And there's no sort of bureaucracy that is limiting people. Once you get to the top, you actually get the answers because they're not bound by the same sort of rules and regulations that the workers are. So yeah, the CEO still has uh, privacy issues and disclosures things that they can't say, but it's nowhere near as much as the average worker in a bank. So it was refreshing to chat with him. It was only 2 days ago that I chatted with him over the phone briefly for about
Oh,
5 or 10 minutes and just
wait,
explained to him that we've been
how did
debanked.
you manage? How did you manage that? How did you manage to get to the CEO of one of the biggest banks in Australia on the phone?
Yeah, so NAB is one of the big four banks. So it is quite a significant connection to make, but it's really not rocket science. There's a plugin called Lasha that you can use in conjunction with LinkedIn, and you can either pay or you can use the free version of it. But I prefer to pay for it, and yeah, it scrapes databases from all around the world and tries to find the contact details of whoever whatever profile you're looking at on LinkedIn, and just happened to be that his mobile number came up with this one, and I was able to contact him directly over the phone.
Holy crap, mate.
Yeah, yeah. I left him a message and he called me back. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Wow.
Mm.
And I wonder how many sleeper Bitcoiners are in these institutions, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I do wonder that too. Um, because they're all going to be Bitcoiners one day. Um, there won't even be someone called a Bitcoiner, they'll just be a normal person. Uh, so eventually they're just going to be using Bitcoin. They're just going to be a normie using Bitcoin. The term Bitcoiner, that'll fade over time as it becomes more normalized.
Yeah, we're not called fiaters.
No, we're not.
No.
So that's how I can tell.
And
Um,
these, I mean, these guys, they have no idea either of the, because, you know, a lot of my peer group, well, I spent 18 years in foreign exchange markets, right? So have a lot
yeah.
of contacts still in that world. And a lot of those, I mean, I left those markets 10 years ago. A lot of people didn't. So in that 10 years, they've moved further up the pecking order.
Mm.
They're still friends, great guys, you know, just trying to put money on the table at the end of the day, but have no idea of the darkness of the fiat currency system and the monetary policy and the Federal Reserve and how that was put together and what it truly um, does to people. Like, you know, it's a system designed to repress us and steadily, insidiously over time steal our purchasing power.
Yes, it's some extremely dark stuff. Once you get to the bottom of it, yeah, it generates an amount of rage that you can channel into doing certain things. Um, it's a good energy source to once you realize the true injustice of it, and the evil intent, the uh, the energy comes quite quickly to do
Mhm.
more and to educate people. Mm.
We just need more people touching the stove, so to speak. You know, I remember talking to you about this in Miami with Izzy, and the book came up that you bought it on the spot actually, and I think you've read it since. The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace
Yes,
Mullins, and
that was a
Ray Youssef
crazy
put me
book.
onto that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can't believe more Bitcoiners haven't read that book.
Same. It's an important book. It's a little bit of a painful read because it can get quite repetitive because it's literally having to spell it out for you. But when they spell it out, it hits hard and it makes you really angry because it's all clearly laid out. Um, yeah, it's if if all that's true, it's a giant cabal, criminal cabal running the world.
Yeah, and it's no
Mm.
secret. And
No, it's not. It's out in the open. That's the crazy part. They're hiding in plain sight.
exactly.
You can even call up the central bank, the BIS. It's crazy.
You
Can happen
even you did that, didn't you? Now you've said that. You've yeah,
three
you
times
told me
now, yeah.
about yeah, what happened there?
Just it's just the receptionist in the building there. That's all I can get to. I did get put through to someone else, but then they said they couldn't talk to me due to personal security. So yeah,
What were you going to ask him? The Bank of International Settlements.
I did ask um what they felt of the current inflation rates around the world and they plan on doing to fix that. And then that's when he said, I'm unable to answer any of your questions due to personal security. So I don't know what he means by personal security. It could be anything. And they also said they were closed. But why are they picking up the phone if they're currently closed? And who am I talking to? I asked for his name and they say they don't use names. Um, yeah, it's
We don't use names.
no, it's policy that no one uses any of their names. And I asked multiple times for their names. I've called three times, spoken with two females, one that sounded Australian, one that sounded European, and one male that sounded very German, or Swiss, either way, German or Swiss. And yeah, the German guy was the one who said he was concerned for his personal security, and the other two just ended up, hanging up at some point. So yeah, but the Aussie one asked if she's from Australia, and she said no. But she was obviously lying because she was definitely Australian. I could hear it in her voice.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, very eerie and creepy.
Weird. Like
Mhm.
are they just trapped themselves in the system, or is this just another level of people that are the guardians over the whole thing? You know, I can't put my finger on it.
They're just worker bees that are trapped, I would say.
Worker
Yeah.
bees, right?
They don't realize who they're working for, why they're doing it. They're just earning fiat, living a normal life. They're not necessarily evil people. It's more the people that are running the show that are fully aware of the implications of what they're doing. Um, yeah, especially the people who founded it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And that goes all the way back to Helmut Sharp and Montague Norman, if I'm not mistaken. Uh,
1913. Yeah.
right. Um, yeah, and how it was set up to funnel, because it's set up in Basel, in neutral Switzerland, but it was
Mm.
used to funnel all kinds of fortunes and gold through that
A
bank.
lot of gold, yeah, and they funded both sides of the world wars.
Yep.
Mm.
I remember
Fiat
actually,
by
I
war
just
is
had
affordable.
Martin Kucher on from BTC Prague, and
Mm.
we were talking about when the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia, they went
Mm.
straight to the central bank to go and get the gold. But
Mm.
that person had to make a phone call to the Bank of England under duress, of course, because, fuck me, there's tanks and shit outside, and these guys walking in with uniforms on and guns telling me, where's the gold? It's at the Bank of England. Call them and have them move it to this account at the Bank of International Settlements, the Third Reich account. And they went and
Mm.
did it. Like it's unbelievable. And
Mm.
crazy. And I read that
Yeah.
in the Tower of Basel, for anybody who wants to go and check that book out.
Right, yeah, I haven't read that one yet. No.
Fucking hell. Anyway, mate, let's not get stuck on that darkness. That's Bitcoin all
Yeah.
done and dusted.
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So what we wanted to talk about on the podcast was a conversation that you had with myself over some coffee in Madeira, and yeah, a couple of others, my wife and another Bitcoiner who I was hoping would be on the pod, but we couldn't make it happen. Maybe we'll do a round two at some stage. And man, what I love about Bitcoin are all these rabbit holes that you get pulled into, and because you're now so intellectually stimulated by Bitcoin, by your interaction with it, and you are now, more inclined to go deeper on any other topic that might present itself in front of you. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, man, you landed one on me that I was absolutely freaking shell shocked at. But now I've heard it, I can't unhear it. And now I've seen it, I can't unsee it. And it's such an important conversation to have, and one I'm pretty sure very few people have ever had or even aware of. So to to tee that up, why don't you get into it, and then I'll just ask you questions along the way and just try and steer the conversation
Yeah.
as naturally as we possibly can, and hopefully we're going to start a little movement here and get some other people involved and do a follow-up pod, and just see where this goes. So let's go, man. Let's get into it.
All right. So I guess a way to introduce it would be if you were to compare the evil and the impact that central banks have had on the world, um, to what we're about to talk about. I think that would be pretty accurate. And essentially, that evil is mass genital mutilation. Um, and what that means is circumcision of the genitalia, whether it be female or male. But around the world, there's over 1 billion males that have been completely circumcised, uh, which means they're unable to experience sex to its full extent. They will never know what it's like as a human being to have the full sexual experience ever. They're going to live and die without knowing. And I think when we talk about injustices, like the central bank, that's a pretty big one because that's physiological and psychological and spiritual and everything. Like the human sexual experience is one of the most powerful experiences we have, and to be robbed of that, uh, I would say, is one of the darkest and most evil things I've ever come across. Um, yeah, me personally, I've been circumcised, um, and I know that you have too, Daniel. After talking with you, and many other people, now that I've been bringing it up in the Bitcoin space, have come up and say, yes, I am too. Um, and what this means is, that there's a lot of trauma and unresolved uh, physical pain, but also longing to know what it actually feels like to have sex. Um, that's been robbed of us without any consent whatsoever. Some are, circumcised when they're an infant, way before they can even talk, let alone give consent. They use a thing called, um, in the US, they use, yeah, there's a consent mechanism they use through the parents. Forgot the name, but they use that, which is a huge injustice to the individual that's actually being mutilated because they have no choice. They're just a baby that have come into this world, and the first thing they know is extreme pain in the area that they're meant to feel extreme pleasure. Um, so it's completely the opposite. Just like how fiat currency is the opposite to money, um, mutilation at birth is the opposite of what you should feel when you come into this world. So it is very evil and dark, and a lot of it's fueled by religion, specifically Islam, uh, and a few others. But I'm not going to go start naming a bunch of religions because it can make a lot of people quite angry. But the point is, with the religion side of things, religion makes people, everyday normal people, moral, prudent people, evil, do evil things without them even realizing. They think they're doing good. Uh, Circumcising a baby boy um, is never a good thing. But in those religions, they see it to be necessary and required, um, which is just hideous. I don't know how that's a thing. I don't know how it's gotten to that point, but it has. And there's over 1 billion people worldwide that have been mutilated, men specifically. It is international law. Um, it is, you're unable to circumcise females. It's international law that's banned. But with males, it's totally fine and it's recommended and encouraged.
I
And I
got a
think
question. I got a
that's the most
question
sexist
just
thing
there.
ever. Yeah,
I
go
got
ahead.
yeah, because we've definitely heard of female genital mutilation before. That's definitely been in the news, and
FGM, yeah.
again, it's not something I've ever looked into, but I'm aware of it because it would have been brought up in newspaper articles or widely shared campaigns against ending this injustice. And uh, yeah, but how many women would you say? Do you have those statistics?
It's about 300,000 globally,
And where was
according
this
to
happening?
sources. I'm not sure where it was happening, but globally, there's apparently about 300,000 women who have been mutilated generally. But I'm not sure if this is including all the countries or this was a specific area of the world, but I did see a 300,000 number compared directly with the 1 billion males. So
300,000 against 1 billion.
yes, there's a huge um, sexist approach to this. Apparently, it's okay to mutilate males, but it's not okay to mutilate females. And you can go and be hung if you mutilate females, but you're prized and you win awards if you mutilate males, as a urologist. So it's there's some really fucked up mentality when it comes to this. And until you're woken up to the effects of what circumcision actually is, or mutilation is, it really doesn't seem important in your mind until you learn about what's actually being removed, which is 14 square inches of skin. It's over 50% of the penis itself is being excised permanently from the body. And it happens to have the most sensitive, important nerve endings for sexual regulation, pleasure, and gratification. Um, all of those are removed, leading to lifelong sexual dysfunction, disconnection in relationships, um, depression, anxiety, all sorts of things come out of uh, circumcision because there's literally nothing the person can do to reverse it, um, which is why I'm very passionate about the solution to people who have already been mutilated, and that happens to be a company called Foregen from Italy. But they're also a US-based 501c not-for-profit. They're always looking for funding. They've been running for 13 or 14 years now. And I personally know the founder of Foregen, Enzo, or Vincenzo Aleo. And he has a mission to completely reverse circumcision for any male that wishes to do so. And they would do that via regeneration of the foreskin itself through a extracellular matrix or ECM tissue from a donor or a cadaver. So a cadaver is a person who's deceased. And essentially, this means that you would be able to go through a surgical procedure that would completely restore full sexual function. And it's actually growing into an ECM, your own cells and your own skin and your own nerve endings. So it's actually the foreskin that you would have had, or very close to what you would have had, because it's your body regrowing that part that's actually missing through that extracellular matrix from someone else. And it's been completely decellularized. So there's nothing that remains of that previous person except the matrix itself, which anyone can populate their cells into. And the 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 reason I'm very excited about this is because they've been going for so long, and they're currently doing their third round of sheep trials, and they're getting very close. And I've been speaking to Enzo a few times over the phone, and he was going to come on this podcast, but unable to make it, unfortunately. But I'm sure in the future we'll have him on. And I've decided to make it my main mission to help this man in achieving his goal of allowing people a way out of this evil, torturous thing that has been done to them without their consent. I think that's going to be a big part of my life from now on. And coming on this podcast and mentioning it to the Bitcoiners that I did at the Madeira conference was really the beginning of my decision to do so. I've finally built up the contention and the anger and the rage to, put myself out there and start speaking up about this and make it clear that it needs to change and we need to end mutilation worldwide ASAP, because it is not a good thing for humanity.
Mate, oh, so much to go on here. Right. And let's start with those of us who had been circumcised, like myself,
Mm,
who had no idea of any of this stuff. As far
mm,
as I'm concerned, I've led a very active sex life. I mean, people know I've been married a very long time, over 20 years,
yes.
4 kids. So I always thought, yeah, there's no problem there. Um, but then when you drop that bombshell, you're like, well, you have actually no idea of what a true human experience
Mm. what
human
I can
sexual
say,
experience like would actually be.
yeah, what I can say
That's tough, man.
it
That
is.
is
It's really tough, and it's what I struggle with every day.
right.
Um, because there's ways you can improve the sexual experience with what you have, which is constant retaining. With the silicon thing, you can pull the skin over and retain 24/7 if you wish, and you can protect the glands rather than having them exposed to the air and your clothing, which is completely unnatural, and it causes them to
That's one thing.
desensitize.
Yeah, desensitive. That's one thing I'd never ever considered because once the foreskin is gone, then
There's
like
no
yeah,
protection. Yeah.
the head of the penis is just bumping up against your jockeys
Yep.
all day long, and over time, that just becomes a little less painful and a little less painful. And
It's immensely painful when you first get circumcised, apparently, especially with people who are being circumcised in their 20s. It is unbearable to have constant exposure to air, but also exposure to the clothing. It's just they don't want to be here anymore. And there is a book called A is for Alex, and it's about this young man in Canada who was convinced to get a circumcision by a urologist, and he didn't have access to his computer because it was broken, and he could only do research on his phone. But they rushed him into it, and he was 23 at the time, I believe, and he was circumcised. So he'd experienced the full sexual experience prior to being circumcised. So he knew uh, what it was like. And unfortunately, about a year after he was circumcised, he took his own life. And there's a whole book written by his mother called A is for Alex. I recommend it. Um, and it just shows if we were to know what we were missing. He was a very educated man, and he was well spoken, loved life. He was traveling, happy guy. And he had this happen to him, and his sexuality was just in tatters. And that was a direct quote. He said, "My sexuality is in tatters." This was on his note that he left to his mum before he ended his life. And yeah, just knowing that a totally normal guy can go from being completely happy traveling the world, loving life, to having that taken from him, and then having that direct comparison from what he has now. And he managed to stand a whole year of it, and then he just completely gave up. He opted out. And yeah, it's sad to see. But
dude,
that's
that's
what scared me when you say you don't know what you're missing. That's probably a major reason why you're still alive right now. Because if you did, you might not be too happy about it.
it's
So
so like yeah, for somebody that I guess what many people are probably kind of squaring in their minds is, well, I was done as a baby, or I how many do you know the stats on? Obviously, there's the religious aspect, and like you, I don't want to touch that hot stove. I'm sure there's many. Let's not get triggered over there, and get this conversation off track. But do you know like what other countries? Like I'm English, and I can't understand. I've been trying to think back, and I think it was just a general GP checkup in the mid '80s,
mm,
which apparently I got caught in a dragnet, and the GP must have convinced my mother and my father that I can't remember the name. There's a medical term for it. Maybe it was tight or something. I can't honestly. I can't
phimosis,
remember. Right, but I can't. What did you say? Sorry.
phimosis or
Phimosis.
paraphimosis. Yeah.
Paraphimosis. Right. I really do not remember having any problems at all up until that point. And then next thing I know, myself and my two brothers, younger, who were just also caught in this dragnet of just in case, you don't want to have further complications down the line when they're a little bit older. Uh,
Mm,
and yeah, job lot. And I'm thinking, so I did some research into like the NHS stance on circumcision, and back in the 50s, it just wasn't a thing. And then all of a sudden, in the 80s to the mid 80s, it was more recommended for medical reasons in air quotes. And I just immediately red flags go up now, having learned what I've learned from you. What what was the real reason behind it? Where did this training come from to get these doctors, uh, you know, up to speed and prescribing mutilation? There's no other word for it. Like there is no other word for it. Especially if there's nothing to do with religion there, then you really are just dealing with, let's cut the end of this lad's penis off for his safety.
Yeah, well, it's really not even just the end, it's half the penis itself. They call it a little snip or, all that sort of stuff to try and make it seem like a smaller thing, but it's not. It's 14 square inches. It couldn't be further from the truth. And there's a thing called the punishment cut, which I happen to get, which is the number five cut.
Wait. There's
And
gradings.
yeah, there's different types of cuts. Yeah, there's low and high, high and tight, low and tight, um, uh, high and loose, low and loose. Um, but the type I got was number five, which is high and tight, which means that there's only about 3 millimeters of inner foreskin left, and yeah, all of the outer foreskin's been removed, the frenulum, the ridge band, um, yeah. And just to give you an idea what a foreskin actually is, there's four distinct parts to a foreskin. It's the frenulum, which is that part underneath the glands, the line underneath the glands. It's a very erogenous part of the penis. There's the inner foreskin, which is highly innervated, millions of Mesner's corpuscles, which is the same nerve endings that you have in your fingertips. So you get that sort of data. But once that's been removed, you have the same sort of sensitivity as your elbow or your arm here, which is not that high information. You have the ridge band, which is even more innervated than the inner foreskin. It's the most erogenous part of a male's body, along with the frenulum itself. Both those, pieces take key parts in the sexual experience for a male. And then the outer foreskin, which is less sensitive, but it's still highly, highly sensitive. Um, but half of that is removed, and it's nowhere near as sensitive as the inner foreskin itself. It's nowhere near as innervated, and it's designed to be less sensitive because that's the part that scratches against the bushes and the leaves as you're running through the jungle. But yeah, that's unfortunately all that we're left with. We're left with the outer foreskin and the glands. The frenulum, the inner foreskin, and the ridge band are completely excised, along with
There's no
most of the.
way. There's no way in the world. I mean, I am now convinced that this is some kind of. This all ties into the depopulation agenda, the eugenicist freak shows that run the freaking
Absolutely, yeah.
world, right? I mean, come on, like what else is it? It's not, oh, it's going to be cleaner for your son and he's having a little bit of difficulty. Even if you were suffering with a little bit of difficulty of tight foreskin, that's going to work itself out. The body knows what the fuck it's
Yeah.
doing.
My urologist that did me, I was about 9 years old, and they got my parents so scared and frightened to the point where they started to say, I'm going to lose my penis if they don't do a circumcision immediately. We went down for a general checkup because they were just concerned about how tight it was. And that same day, they managed to separate me from my parents, put me in a room, sit me on a bed with a curtain around the entire bed. They had these beds that have complete privacy. You can roll them around. And they tell you to count down from 10, and I got to 7, and all of a sudden I didn't have a foreskin anymore. And I had no idea what was going on at the time. I was 8 years old, and there was no way I could comprehend the gravity of the situation itself. Um, and I was never told during the operation that I was going to lose half my penis in this operation, and that it wasn't completely necessary at all. I could just use a stretching device, and stretch my existing foreskin. There was zero reason to remove the entire tissue. If you have something wrong with any other part of your body, they're not going to immediately excise it. They're going to try and preserve and reduce harm to the patient. But when it comes to circumcision, the first option is to completely excise the entire organ, no matter what.
Makes no sense. Unless you're a dark, evil motherfucker. But the doctors aren't. But they're
The
training you.
urologists have been captured. by
Yeah,
by the mindset and the dogma of cut it off, it's healthier.
because that's their training. And who
That's the
provides the
training.
training? The people that
Yes.
captured the whole medical system are the same people that captured
Yes.
the whole monetary system are the same people that captured the whole education system.
Yes. You could say that um, a lot of the MGM today is a product of fiat as well. Um, MGM has been around for a long time, but the 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 size of it now and the capability um, and the volume of people being circumcised has to be a product of fiat because it just wouldn't be affordable otherwise. You know, how is Bill Gates circumcising, millions of males in Africa right now? Fiat,
That motherfucker.
credit, debt, and a lot of people's money that have been donated to him. So, it's not great, and we've got to fix it. We've got to educate people immediately, especially in the Bitcoin space, and we have to fund companies like Foregen so people have a way out, so they don't go to dark places. And um, if we have a surgery like Foregen, that Foregen's trying to produce, it means that people have hope. Just like how Bitcoin exists as freedom technology, Foregen is trying to build a freedom technology just like Bitcoin, but it's in the physical realm, and it's for people who have had serious injustice in their life, which is removal of their primary sexual organ or most of their sexual organ. It gives them the ability to regrow that entirely, and that's freedom tech. So that's why I'm supporting Enzo. That's why I'm supporting Foregen. I donate to them personally, and I encourage anyone in the Bitcoin space that has been circumcised or wants to support in general people who have been circumcised to support Foregen directly in Bitcoin. They accept Bitcoin as donations um, to help not only get them there faster, but get them there in a high quality manner. They're working with some of the best people in the world currently, but they could have more staff on board and they could have better facilities. They're using a university lab in Italy currently, which is it's working, and they're able to do sheep trials and cadaver labs, but it could be much more efficient and much bigger if they had millions of dollars to play with instead of thousands of dollars. You know, they're running on about 30,000 a month from donations from everyone around the world, which isn't enough to really get them there in a rapid manner and a high quality manner. They need millions of dollars to pull this operation off.
And look what you're fighting, right? Because I just did a quick search whilst we were talking. Bill Gates circumcision. That's all I put in. And 15th of June, 2009, in the New Scientist, Microsoft founder Bill Gates last week injected $50 million into a program to circumcise up to 650,000 men in Swaziland and Zambia. Like,
Yeah,
fuck this. Like, what is,
that's
I
mass
mean,
genital mutilation. Yeah, yeah.
mass genital mutilation in two countries that he has no business doing anything for or against. And it's the same every time with this guy, every single time on any topic. You can
Mm.
search any topic and he's top of the list. Hang on. Traditional methods of circumcision sometimes harm and even kill boys and young men, right? So we
Absolutely.
know this. We
Yeah,
know that.
huge hemorrhaging can occur. It's a lot of blood that goes to that part of the
The,
body.
the network of 250 teams of providers will be managed by Population Services International. I guarantee you that's a eugenicist freak show, fucking Planned Parenthood, Malthusian praising, devil worshipping. I'm getting a little bit triggered, mate.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. It's happened
But
to both
like,
of us, and there's nothing we can do about it.
if we don't fight
We
against it, is
support Forgen and hope for the best.
TikTok next cock, right? That's what we're fighting against
Mm.
because they're not going to give up because this is clearly depopulation event because you're going to down engineer um, men.
Yeah, it's devolving.
It's an attack on all fronts. Like
Yeah,
so 4gen.
I'd like to know if Bill Gates is circumcised. while he's doing all these circumcisions to these other men.
I guarantee he isn't.
Probably not. Yeah.
None of these high order priests, I very much doubt, are.
Hmm. Rules for thee, but not for me.
What's the do you know how many? I know it's very prevalent amongst US men to be circumcised. Do you know
60%
why?
roughly.
What, sorry?
60% of the US population is circumcised roughly, I think, from
That
last
can't be
check.
all religion.
No, it's not. Most of it's just the medical system and the habitual, would you like your son circumcised, Mister and or, Miss? And like, oh yes, you know. Or there's cases where they just circumcise them anyway, and then they present them back to their, mother. Um, oh yeah, we did the circumcision for you, and then they end up suing them for millions of dollars. Um, there's all sorts of different processes in many different states in the US, but they really it's become such a routine thing that it's just habit over there. Oh, new baby, cut it off.
God, I know there's a lot of babies being born right now. Bitcoin babies, mums, dads, please be listening.
Yes,
Especially,
protect your children. Otherwise they will get them.
and I hope there's a lot of doctors and nurses listening too. And this might be tough to listen to, but you've been gaslit.
Mm. Yeah. I wish my parents protected me, um, but they didn't. They weren't informed. They were, they weren't given informed consent. They were told it was the best for my health, and that I was going to lose an important piece of me if they didn't go through with that. They use fear as an amazing, powerful tool to make people do the most evil, heinous things, and it works.
What
And
happens to the skin? Do you know?
there's a lot of rumors that, well, there's evidence, there's clear evidence that people do use it. They use the stem cells to reduce the effects of aging in the face. You have a lot of celebrities that openly claim that they're using baby foreskin on their face. And you can look at all this sort of stuff. And they're always very hesitant to tell you where it's from, but they do tell you where it's from. Um, and they always say, oh, it's just from some kid in Africa or something, and it's far, far away from here, and you don't need to worry. Um, but no, it's mutilation, and you're stealing someone's stem cells in their skin without their consent in order to make yourself look younger, and
Is this the
it's
whole
basically vampire shit.
is this the whole adrenochrome thing? Is that, am I saying that right?
Adrenochrome's different. That's more the thing back in quite a while ago, and it's apparently adrenaline from children extracted or something.
All
I
right.
don't know. I haven't
Okay.
looked into that enough to really speak on that topic, but that's a separate thing.
Okay. Well, I do remember something went around Twitter. I think it was Sandra Bullock being interviewed on Ellen DeGeneres
Mhm.
show, and they were talking about how you look so young, and is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah.
Wow. So, like, what pharmaceutical companies are getting hold of them en masse, and then just using them for like creams or something to sell
Yeah.
to.
Well, not creams, it's injections. They inject the stem cells apparently. But
All right.
um the struggle of getting tissue is quite real for Foregen, where they've managed to get a few connections now, and they're getting tissue in, but the war in Ukraine really cut off the last tissue supplier, the previous one that they were using. Um, so they've had to find new ones, but all of those tissue sources are going to be captured by whoever's actually using these tissues. Because I can almost guarantee you they're not going straight in the bin. Um, they're going somewhere and they're being used somewhere. But a lot of that speculation, but yeah, there's a lot we don't know. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And again, incentives, right? There's always ah yeah, it's too dark to even think about, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Um,
Through all this darkness, though, uh, there is that hope of Foregen, you know. And if people can, once they've gone down this discovery pathway and they've realized exactly what's happened to them and the gravity of that situation, just know that there's people actively working today, to fix it. They're trying to fix these broken people, and give them back what's been taken. And I think that's one of the most, you know, honorable, mighty things that I've ever seen someone try and do, especially on the scale they're attempting to do so. Enzo is extremely intelligent and
Was
you know,
he
calm,
circumcised?
collected, quiet
Was he
man.
circumcised himself?
He is.
What is
He
that?
got
What's driven this?
circumcised later in life. I think it was in his 40s.
Fuck.
Um, and he was convinced by people to do it. And, you know, he was told that it was a good thing. And they did the whole, you know, rounds on him and made sure he was properly brainwashed. And then he agreed to do it. Um, Obviously without informed consent. Because if he was to be fully informed, he wouldn't have chosen to do it. And you know, he knows what he's missing, and that's what gives him the drive, similar to what Alex had in A is for Alex. He knows the importance of it and the criticality of having the full sexual experience. Um, so that's why he's doing what he's doing as well. He's doing it to fix the injustice towards him, but also to millions and hundreds of millions of men worldwide. Um, Obviously, I don't think Foregen will be able to fix 1 billion people anytime soon, but they they should be able to scale to a significant amount and at least get the people who are aware of what's happened to them and really want out. Um, that's who they're going to prioritize first, the people who know exactly what's happened to them, and that Foregen is the only way out.
Are they the only game in town at the moment?
They're the only company on planet Earth currently working on restoring the entire foreskin. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. And I just
Yeah.
hope, I mean, I just hope these conversations carry on. This one being the first, I hope, of many. I'm
Mm.
sure there are corners of the internet that have already blown this up, and there are other people down this rabbit hole already. So, you know, I sing their praises. I just hadn't heard anything about this. None of this had ever come across my radar until you brought it up to me in Bitcoin Atlantis, and I'm fully on board to help. Um, I guess my motivation is to stop as many, like, you know, rescue, you know, as many little lads going forward. You know, get the education into our community, at least whoever tunes into these podcasts, the Bitcoiners. Uh, as we grow this community, like let's leave our
Mm.
let's leave our kids intact, man. Like really, like this makes
Yeah.
let's get back to basics.
Yeah. There's a lot of intactivist groups that are promoting intactivism, or people that are trying to stop the circumcision itself. But the thing I'm really focusing on right now is the solution for people who have already been mutilated. And I see that as the most pressing issue because that's over a billion men. And all of those people know something's happened to them, that they're changed, but not all of them know that they're mutilated.
No,
Um,
that's the key word. That's what drives a revolution, when you
yes.
know that you've been completely and utterly played. And not only that, our parents too, you know?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
I if I go back in time and put myself in my parents' position when they were having that laid on them, and you
Mhm.
know, I know how these fuckers do it.
Yeah.
Like they did with your parents, right? It's such a psyop. It's, you know, oh, you're not to blame, but it's just got to be done. Or it is, in your case, you are to blame. You didn't look after your son properly. You're not a good parent, and this has got to happen. And like that baggage never goes away. That
Yeah. And they don't
emotional,
deserve that either.
psychological baggage.
You know, they don't deserve that baggage that it's being put upon them by the medical industry. Um, they were given the impossible choice of, let him lose his penis or chop off half of it.
Fucking hell, man, it's so bad.
Yeah, it is really bad.
And
Yeah.
like, so the trauma that you and I carry, and every other circumcised man that's listening to this, even if you are a baby,
Mm.
because Rob, who I wanted to be part of this conversation, couldn't make it. Rob Brinded wrote Decentralized Mind. He talks about detachment and abandonment, and there's
Mm.
like, wow, the end of your penis, like that, from birth in many
Yeah.
cases, or within
I,
8 days, or whatever it is, or they catch you between the age of 1 and 10. It doesn't really matter when it happens.
mm,
Some At some age you're going to be more cognizant of it, obviously, especially if you're
mm,
an adult. But as a baby, you're carrying that trauma still,
yeah.
like subconsciously. It
Yeah.
knows.
I wouldn't, yeah, your body knows that it's missing. And you have to do a lot of work on yourself to realize that. And the the thing the, so with Rob, he's going to be great to have on another conversation because he understands trauma and how it works and how it affects the brain. But I would say instead of abandonment, I would call it loss, because it's like losing a part. You've lost a part of yourself.
Mm.
So you almost mourn it, um, because you never get it back. It's just like losing, you know, someone out of your life, but it just happens to be part of you, which is, what anyone experiences if they lose a limb or they lose part of their body. They have that feeling of loss and they mourn that, and that's quite tricky to work through, because if you ever get into a relationship, you'll never be able to give that other person all of you. You're giving them a part of you, um, and they don't deserve part of you. They deserve all of you, and you deserve to give them all of you as well, and all that sort of stuff. And it's pretty damn dark, but there is light and there is hope. But we really really need to focus on getting funding for this company because it is the most important thing, um, for these billion people around the world, happening right now when it comes to their own personal health and well-being, and it's getting fuck all funding, to be honest.
Mm.
So, especially in the Bitcoin space as well, if we can talk to people that are high net worth individuals and show them the injustice and educate them on what's actually happened here, and you know, especially if one of them have been mutilated themselves, that could be incredibly powerful for funding for this company and what they're trying to do. They've been doing it for 13 years straight, and they're very well set up. They're all, regulatorily tight. They're doing everything above board. They have to get approval for all their trials and everything. They're doing everything by the book. They just need the money.
So if somebody is listening to this and does have the ability and does want to put a little bit of their weight behind it, whether that's just with their um, status or with some Bitcoin or with some dollars, whatever, what would
Mm.
the process be? Like, you reach out to you directly. If not, get to me, then I'll get to you, and then they would have fly over, see the facility, or have a discussion with Enzo. You said it's US listed 501c, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not for profit in the US, yes. So it's tax deductible, for any US citizen. Any donations made to Foregen. You can also directly donate in Bitcoin. They accept Bitcoin, and yeah, the to if you'd like to donate, you can either contact myself or Daniel, or you can donate directly to Foregen themselves, via their website,
Right. And we've got a Signal group set
foregen.org.
up as well, which we got set up. There's already 5 or 6 of us in there. So if anybody has listened to this and they want to get in that support group, I guess, I don't know. It's a group where we're sharing ideas and we're pulling up all of the different resources that we're finding, just trying to dig to the bottom of this rabbit hole. And I'll be bringing
Yeah.
a couple of those guys on for a follow up interview in a few weeks. Um, use some personal stories as well because they are so powerful.
Mm.
Because when you hear somebody else's personal story, which is exactly the same as yours, then you're like, "Why, man? You have no choice but to start speaking up." You're like, the
Yeah,
connection is real.
yeah,
So yeah, reach out to me or Ben, and we'll drop you the Signal link if you want to come and learn a little bit more or add some weight to the conversation as well.
yeah. I've enjoyed being in that end mutilation chat. It's nice to have a few Bitcoiners together on this and chatting about it and educating each other even more with more resources and materials.
Yeah,
It's been
thanks to
great.
you, man, for stepping up and yeah, putting your trust in me to have the conversation, I suppose, because like it's a weird one just to drop on people. You've got to be able to what how long did it
I do
take
it
you
with a
to
lot of care though, because um, there is the blissful ignorance side of things. But there has to be some suffering in order to bring out the solution. We can't just keep quiet about it forever, because otherwise it's just going to continue happening and there'll never be a solution for people who have had mutilation happen to them. So we have to speak up. We have to do inform some people that they've been mutilated, um, because otherwise it's never going to change.
yeah, break the taboos, man.
Hmm.
And we can actually like legitimately get to send each other dick pics now, right? So
I don't know about that.
oh, I had to end it on a lighter note. Right.
Yeah.
So if you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why? Or if you prefer, if you had one last mutilation pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why? And like so they could open their mind to the fact of, humanity has been systematically under attack with this like awful.
So who I would choose to tell next, you mean?
Yeah. If there's one person you could say, look, bam, this is what's going on.
Michael Saylor. Yeah. I,
Well,
I I had the pleasure of meeting him in Miami last year, which was great. And yeah, I think he would be very receptive to this, because he would see the injustice and he would see the freedom technology that's being attempted, um, at being built. And they're getting close. They've been 13 years into this now. It's not like they're just starting out and they don't know what they're doing. They're literally putting foreskins on sheep right now as we speak. It's the third sheep trial. Um, and they've got a brand new method of doing it because the previous two haven't been ideal. They've had necrosis in some of them, but they've got a new skin bearing technique to make the body into a bioreactor for the new tissue. Then they reattach it. Um, so all that's happening right now, and Enzo is incredibly uh, positive towards it and very uh, he has this energy about him. He knows that the magic can happen because it's happened in other parts of the medical industry. You can have a hand transplant today. Um, why can't you have a foreskin transplant? You know, it has to be possible, and this is why he's so um happy about it. He knows he's probably going to make it work. It's just a matter of time and a matter of money. And the more money and resources and people they can get involved, the faster they're going to get there and in a high quality manner as well. So that's why I think it's important to tell people like Michael Saylor and other high net worth individuals in the space, because they have a lot of spare capital that they would love to know, how can I make an impact in my life before I
yeah,
leave this planet?
where are
You
the
know,
injustices?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they can live knowing that they've made a difference, in a
I,
big way for over 1 billion people on the planet,
I
which is
know you
huge.
you got a 10-second chat in with Jack Dorsey, I think, at Bitcoin Atlantis as well.
Yeah, I chatted with him for a couple minutes at Bitcoin Atlantis. I pulled him aside when he was walking around the general area there, and he listened to me, and he definitely heard me. And I've since contacted him via email, but we're waiting on a response there. But He definitely looked into my eyes and he heard what I was saying and he saw the injustice. And I didn't hold back. I told him everything. And then that 2 minute period, I really sort of laid it out for him. And yeah, he said, contact me. Here's my email. And, we take it from there. So these people are the people that can make a very big difference to companies like these because they just have immense amounts of capital. Um, and a small portion of that can make such a huge difference for so many people on this earth. And I think that's what we need to focus on more than smaller individual donations. We need to get someone who's much more capable of making a huge difference and looking for something to do in that sense. Looking for ways they can help in their short life.
Yes. All right, mate. Well, thank you for coming on. Yeah, thank you everybody for listening as well. If you made it through this far, there's probably a reason you're still listening. There's a much bigger discussion to be had here, and I look
Absolutely.
forward to seeing how this is picked up by the plebs. That's one thing I love about this community. You find the right people at the right time for the right reasons when you have these conversations and you get them out there, and you face people with facts, and these are just pure facts that you've laid out today.
Mm.
So yeah, I look forward to anybody wants to reach out, join this signal group, let us know. We're down to welcome as many people in there as possible, men and women. Right, women need as much information about that as men do, especially if
Mm.
you're going to be growing a family over the next handful of years, which a lot of Bitcoiners are doing right now. So Ben, appreciate you coming on, mate, and having the bravery to put your neck on the line and have these discussions and put yourself out there and help out this company Foregen. So yeah, well done, mate. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Daniel. I really enjoyed our conversation.
See you in no, Warsaw.
Warsaw. Yeah, see
See you,
you
mate.
then.